chapter 29, text 32, because we're going to chant the verse. 4, 29, 32. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Dokeshva ekate napi. Daiva Bhotatma Hetusho Jivasya Navyachaneda Syache Tat Tat Pratikriya Dukeshve Katare Napi Daiva Bhutatma Hetusho Jivasya Vyachedena Syache Tat Tat Pratikriya. Translation: the living entities are trying to counteract different miserable conditions pertaining to providence, other living entities, or the body and mind. Still, they must remain conditioned by the laws of nature despite all attempts to counter these laws. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Just as a dog wanders here and there for a piece of bread or punishment, the living entity perpetually wanders, trying to be happy and planning in so many ways to counteract material misery. This is called the struggle for existence. We can actually see in our daily lives how we are forced to make plans to drive away miserable conditions, to get rid of one miserable condition. We have to put ourselves in another kind of miserable condition. A poor man suffers for want of money, but if he wants to become rich, he has to struggle in so many ways. Actually, that is not a valid process, a valid counteracting process, but a snare of the illusory energy. If one does not endeavor to counteract his situation, but is satisfied with his position, knowing that he has obtained his position through past activities, he can instead engage his energy to develop Krishna consciousness. This is recommended in all Vedic literature. Tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido na labhyate yat brahmatam uparayata tal labhyate dokavad antyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabira ramhasa. Bhagavatam 1:5-18. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet Brahmaloka down to the lowest planet Patalaloka. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in the course of time. Just as in the course of time we obtain miseries, even though we do not desire them. One should simply try to develop his Krishna consciousness and not waste his time trying to improve his material condition. Actually, the material condition cannot be improved. The process of improvement means accepting another miserable condition. However, if we endeavor to improve our Krishna consciousness, the distresses of material life will disappear. Without extraneous endeavor, Krishna therefore promises, Konteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. Bhagavad Gita 9:31. One who takes to the path of devotional service will never be vanquished, despite all miseries of the body and mind, and despite all misery brought about by other living entities and providence, miseries which are beyond our control. Ukeshu ekata re nahi daiva bhutatma hetushu jivashana vyavachedaha such shats chet tat pratikriya. The living entities are trying to counteract different miserable conditions pertaining to providence. Three things: providence, daiva, are the living entities, bhuta, atma, and the body and mind. Still, one must remain conditioned by the laws of nature, despite all attempts to counter these laws. One of the themes that Srila Prabhupada would speak about, because the scriptures speak about it consistently, is making a distinction between animal life or polished animal life and human life. Animal life or polished human life are essentially the same, just two-legged instead of four-legged or something like that. But the objective or target or methodology of living, while it may appear to be advanced or sophisticated or misuse, it's use of intelligence in order to make sophisticated arrangements for animal propensities. That's misguided intelligence, and is missing the human mission. So the scripture, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, are there to remind us of the human mission, or solving permanently. That's a big word, permanently. Solving the problems. And if one is not engaged in the mission of permanently solving the problems, then one will be engaged in the fruitless, mission impossible objective of making a material solution to material problems. It's not a solution to the material problems. As described here, that the solution creates another problem. And there's so many easy to provide examples of the solution creates a problem that didn't exist before the solution existed. And it doesn't make a permanent solution to the problem. And how many times, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, verses and purports, that theme is repeated. Human, to say it again positively, human mission is meant to make a permanent solution And someone would say, not possible. Because we're only aware of that which is perceivable by our senses, which are material, and the objects are material, and solutions are not permanent. Although in the endeavor to make a solution, it's so easy. It's standard practice in life to be absorbed in problem solving. Like waves in the river or waves in the ocean, will there be any cessation of problems? As long as there's rivers, and as long as there's oceans, as long as there's the laws of nature, there will be problems. And it's a nice word, inexorable. It's just part of the soul coming in contact with matter. There's problems. And then there's these three categories, standard categories, and sometimes, or a combination, or all three of them. And then we're busy solving problems that can't be permanently solved. They can be mitigated, but that mitigation doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't even address the problem. The miserable condition, so go back to square one. How does misery start? If you know how misery starts, then you have a solution. That's pretty easy. But people don't go to how does misery start? They just go to problem solving. So the source of the misery, according to Vedic wisdom, is our forgetfulness of our relationship with Krishna, turning our back, bahir mukha jiv, turning our back to the sun, and you see darkness or shadow. And the simple solution is turn your attention to the sun, and then you don't see shadow. And there is still a shadow, but it's not affecting you because you're not identifying with it. Therefore, there's this transition space, starting with you tolerate tongues to tiksha swabharata. You tolerate the circumstance that there's nothing you can control the cause of anyways, because there's laws of nature. And then the laws of nature says, I'm due a certain amount of happiness, I'm due a certain amount of distress, and my business is not to increase the happiness and decrease the stress. The point of this verse is, specifically, by that kind of misapplied intelligence, it just creates another misery. This unhappiness having a solution creates another misery, because it's fundamentally missing the human mission. And the human mission, one more time, is remembering who we are. And remembering who we are means it's implicit, but to make it explicit, it's our relationship with the Supreme. So human life is to revive our relationship with the Supreme. Very simple. And again 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 and again. Reminders, that's the human mission. So this is the discussion between Narada and King Prachini Bari, who is on the wrong path. He's on the path of problem solving and finding happiness through pious activities and then getting an upgrade. And so when there's an upgrade, that's happiness. That's not what happiness is. It's not what the cessation of misery is. It's not the cessation of ignorance. It's another variety of ignorance. It's a polished animal life manifestation. Or say it again differently. If that's polished animal life, what's human life? And human life is what Scripture is for. However, there's a kind of obstinacy, stubbornness, to keep trying to do essentially the same thing, just modifying the covering of that same thing. Doing it in a more elegant and sophisticated and perfumed manner without really addressing the root. The root is ignorance. And from ignorance comes suffering. It's very simple. So how do you get rid of ignorance? Light, or turn your attention to the source of everything. That's where light comes from. And then stay there. And then with the diversity of our psychophysical nature, you engage in your tendencies, psychophysical tendencies, with your attention, perform Dharma in prescribed manner with attention upon the personality of Godhead. Don't be adharmic, be dharmic. No argument there. But then the more subtle part, and where the challenge comes, is the mind upon the source of everything. Because we're very habituated, who knows how many lifetimes, to distraction. Being distracted is very easy. Being undistracted is bhakti. Being undistracted means there's the vaidhi and there's the raga stage of not being distracted. Vaidhi means there's regulations that help me keep my mind and the internal portion of my life focused on what the goal is. Now, conditioned life takes us away from what the goal is. Conditioned life takes us into the animal kingdom of consciousness. So that the change of consciousness starts with hearing from a proper source. Because hearing we're doing anyways. The proper source, that's key. And then hearing with attentiveness, that's another key. And in the beginning, staying focused on dharmic, that's where the challenge is. Because conditioning is all over the place, or one can say adharmic, especially as the age of Kali progresses, or from the Satya Yuga the ages progress. Tendency is otherwise. Conditioning is otherwise. So we have to check our conditioning and stay with that within the realm of Dharma. And then comes a nice definition. What's Dharma? There's codes, but then where do the codes come from? It's just like I can be obedient to the laws of the state, the government. I may not have appreciation for the government, but I follow the laws of the government, because if I don't follow the laws of the government, there's punishment. I mean, supposing you just decide I want to drive a car without getting a driver's license, I start driving a car without going through the regulation of getting a driver's license because I want. Well, that's outlaw. And the outlaw may escape the government, but the outlaw is an outlaw, and the outlaw is punishable, and there's a punishment for violation of law. And with God's law, the laws of nature, there's no escape. You can't fly in the sky. You have 2 legs, you got to walk with 2 legs. So you can try to get an airplane. Then it creates some other problems. And so it goes. Advancement of civilization is not problem solving. In the material sense of problem solving. Advancement of civilization is, say it in the positive or say it in the negative. Making a permanent solution to problems. On the positive, knowing who you are. And living according to eternally who you are. And then when you're living eternally according to who you really are, there's still problems. They didn't go away. Birth, death, disease, old age, they're there. And sometimes they're a combination of those things. And we're going down the path of embodied life and there's problems. And it's really easy just to get absorbed in problem solving. Doesn't mean you become negligent, but that's not the human mission. So then the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, scripture is there to teach us how to navigate that territory. Minimally, stay within the boundaries of Dharma, and internally cultivate, your mind goes to Krishna. Then there's primary and supportive methods of keeping the mind absorbed in Krishna. The primary is the process of hearing, just like we're doing this morning. And the advice of this verse, Narada to King Prajinibari, don't make the mistake of thinking you've solved your problems by counteracting or reducing the pernicious effects of the laws of nature. Doesn't mean you don't do it, just like I can hear the sound of the air conditioning system. So it's not like we toss the air conditioning out. We don't negate, but we don't find, we must not think, now my problems are solved. When you accept something, you accept that something in service to Krishna, and meanwhile, focusing to assist one to focus on the mission, the human mission. So that's what, in this little section of the fourth canto Bhagavatam, Narada's advising Prajinibari, or Narada's advising us how to navigate our way through the miseries of life. In short, in summary, don't invest all energy in problem solving. 1, 2, and 3. It's not that the instruction is just accept it, Prabhu. We adjust accordingly. Like say, when it's raining, you may carry an umbrella. When it's cold, you may wear a jacket, and etc., etc. We arrange things around us according to the circumstance of duality, but success is not conquering the laws of nature, because it's not going to happen. So what's success? Success is knowing who you are. Knowing who you are includes knowing what is being said here by Narada to Prajinibari in the whole section. That the purpose behind anything, this nice saying, the Sarva Vidi Nishedashur Eva Etayor Eva Kinkara. The purpose of all vidhis, the purpose of all regulations, is to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. But supposing you're really keen on following the regulations, and you don't understand the purpose behind following the regulations, then you miss the point. And you go the other direction. My goal is just to remember Krishna so I don't have to think about the regulations. Well, that's not advisable either. But the essence is the essence, and the essence doesn't mean you negate those things that enhance and facilitate the essence. We accept regulations purposefully. Then comes the big question, what's the purpose? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Living our lives in a dharmic way. Accepting those things that are going to protect us. And cautiously avoiding those things that puts us in harm's way. We don't knowingly engage in adharma. We knowingly stay with Dharma. Now, King Prajinibari is not just a fellow on the street. He's a very highly elevated personality, and therefore Narada can speak according to his position. So this position that's being spoken of here is a little bit of a refinement beyond, you're not the body, and, ABC. So it's just a comment. The comment is, we should be sensitive to, as best as possible, finding out, if you don't already know, the position of your audience, and then address according to the position of your audience. Now, Bhagavad Gita is, we say, it's the undergraduate study, and the Bhagavatam is the graduate study, which implies that at least the undergraduate study understanding has been accomplished, or you've achieved it. Now you're going on to graduate study. And in our case, it's not necessarily that we've already fully grasped and living by Bhagavad Gita. Nonetheless, the graduate study text is there for a reason. It helps us understand the undergraduate study level, and it encourages us. There's a sweetness in Srimad Bhagavatam, in its narrations and its capacity to attract us to Krishna. It's within the text, it's within the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a sweetness that helps us let go of the bitter, or the sources of misery. Ignorance. Ignorance, the essence of ignorance is ignoring Krishna, or ignoring the source of everything. Although Krishna declares in Bhagavad Gita that he's the source of everything, we may or may not have that in the front of our consciousness as we read through the Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam has some of that, substantially some of that, in its text, as well as revealing more and more about the personality, the form, the qualities, the loving exchanges of Krishna with his devotees, and how his devotees help people, like Narada, help people remember Krishna when they're in a distressed situation. Summary. Don't try to make a permanent solution with temporary methodologies. That's a mistake. And are we interested in a permanent solution? Second point. Largely we're interested in a temporary solution. I mean, success means there's a problem and I'm going to pay attention to that problem. Subtext, I've forgotten Krishna while I'm paying attention to the problem. The problem seems to have diminished, and that's my success. That's foolishness. And that, a large part of the earlier stages, even in bhakti, that's what goes on. The good news is, by repeated hearing that sound vibration in a meaningful way, it's cleansing, it's purifying, and slowly, slowly, by the grace of God and his devotees, coverings become reduced, and one can start to understand with more clarity what's the real message, what's the real mission of human life. And so we continue to read and study and hear and discuss. That's a good beginning. Let's see if there's some comments or discussion from you all.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. While the government policies or the whole system is geared towards removing economic development, removing poverty and betterment of life, and and it does happen that poverty is eradicated, hunger is removed for many people, and it does happen like that. But the generally people just see that, okay, now I have improved my life, the life has become very comfortable, and it stops there. And however, they cannot see that it is creating more problems. Generally that's government doesn't see, or people doesn't see, and they just focused on economic development and creating more and more jobs and more economy. And so how one can actually see that it is actually creating more problems and not solving the problem?
Well, two things, two categories of problems that are created rather than problems are solved. The bigger step back and the bigger picture is, by that kind of problem solving is perpetuation of the big problem, meaning the birth and death problem. I'll just say it again. The mindset of problem solving and finding solutions to problems, just take air conditioning. The bigger problem isn't solved. So we're creating or perpetuating the illusory idea. It doesn't mean that we don't get air conditioning in our homes, but it's not a permanent solution. The mission of human life, the mission of who we really are, is perpetuated. The loss of that mission is perpetuated by ignorance, by ignoring what the real problem is. And then just take air conditioning or any other thing. What about energy? The need to get the electricity. So then there's a solution, and then that has its limitations and problems and keeps going on. Now, we don't have to worry about it so much because there's electricity. And there's always going to be suppliers of electricity, we think. But, the supply is dependent upon the supplier. And who is the supplier? If we ignore the supplier, the energy supply may be reduced. And, so it's creating another problem. It may not be in my face, in my nose, but it's creating another problem, creating another problem, creating another problem. Okay, we'll go green and try to, etc., etc. But thoughtful persons understand, even materially thoughtful persons understand, more problems are created by the solution to the problem. And then comes greed for where's the energy supply going to come from. And then conflict between, so without taking one particular thing, just the principle is thoughtful persons can understand the solution to the problem creates further problems. And one might say, well, that it's better this problem than that problem, because that problem is too oppressive. Heat when there's no air conditioning is too oppressive. So it's not don't get air conditioning, but it's be aware that it's not a permanent solution and that further problems are created. It's not a small thing. and now people who are combating one another in that conflict situation that rises because of there's only a limited supply and so forth and so on. It's the animal behavior comes out in sophisticated ways. Anyway, the solutions create more problems. And thoughtful persons can understand that. So, what to do? Why and what to do? It's not that we don't live our lives in a way that's accepting some facility or another facility. Like we drive cars. And let the energy people figure out how to get, carbon neutral cars. Anyway, one problem creates another. One solution creates another problem. Then comes, whatever that solution is that's carbon neutral, then the resource of the carbon neutral energy supply. And it just goes on and on. And thoughtful people have some understanding, and most people are utilitarian. So when you step back from that, okay, I'm not sure I got the whole deal, but I get the principle. Now, what's the solution to that? The solution is Krishna consciousness, or Maya Saktamana Partha Yogam Yun Janvarashraya. That's the solution. Scripture gives us the solution. And meanwhile, we drive cars. And try and move in the direction of not depleting limited resources so that people squabble over those limited resources that remain. Anything else?
When you were reading and explaining today's verse, it was clear that we should be on the dharmic side.
Yeah.
And how to be on the dharmic side is living a regulated life, and not focus on problem solving or just increasing my happiness quotient in my life. But looks like being regulated seems to be the key for achieving that balance.
Well, regulated is kind of neutral. It's neutral. By that I mean it's minimizing, doesn't eliminate, but it minimizes extremes. Too much or too little. Regulating has to do with, say, acceptance of my temporal situation. I have a certain body and a certain set of senses and a certain mind, and I want to regulate them because that helps me become situated in goodness, and goodness helps me become situated in self-knowledge, knowing who I am, in a permanent sense. It's a doorway. It's an essential doorway, but it's not. It's not the means. The regulation requires something to power it. That is to say, bhakti. Or doing that for what purpose? Because if I do it from more goodness basis, then it's going to get compromised, for sure, through passage of time. Why for sure? Because I'm not fixed on what the purpose of our mission of life is. It's a doorway, but it's not the means. It's not this. It's a means, but it's not the mode of goodness life enhances one's opportunity towards transcendental life. But you could say something, about honesty, and then interpersonal honesty and self-honesty. So that's imperative. We can take some other characteristics of the mode of goodness and say some similar things. Regulation implies the senses and the mind. And so regulating the mind and senses it's an essence, it's an essential part of any yoga system. So you do those things that are essential for any yoga system. At the same time, it's not what the essence is. It's a doorway. But it's not the essence. Because I can walk through that doorway and then walk back. Circumstance and time. Someone else? Yes? Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. As you mentioned, like this point of adjusting to the temporary and forgetting the permanent mission, this point, like Prachinambar, he already explained last 3 chapters with allegory, and it comes again and again, like repeatedly. But what I'm understanding after hearing repeatedly, I'm little bit knowing like what to do, maybe what not to do, like the real mission to remember Krishna in all the activities that I'm continuing. But unwanted tendencies, whatever I have, I do it. Means with maybe that at that point I'm not trying to remember or whatever my conditioning is. Yeah, it just happens. When I think back about it, I feel bad about what I have done, the mistakes, what I have committed. But navigating that territory, feeling bad about what I have done, and knowing what I am hearing, to go from what I know to how to implement all the time, it feels sometimes very painful, and sometimes I get stuck there to navigate. Like if I make a mistake or something, to get up and go. Okay, it is okay to make a mistake, and then it means it happens continuously. So it sometimes brings me down. So how to go positively? It is
Yeah, I hear several things in your question. Very thoughtful question, first of all. And what you expressed is not uncommon to most of us. So, misery loves company. I'm not alone. Rupa Goswami's teachings are Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings are the Bhagavatam's teachings. And there's a connection between vidhi and raga. Vidhi means rule and regulation, just like what was mentioned before. And so this is the answer to your question. If the vidhi continues in proper association, there's the qualifier, then I can get the association of those that have, as I also innately have, a spontaneous attraction. Because when you do vidhis, you're acknowledging, I'm not pure, I need to become pure, and because I'm not pure, I'm going to make mistakes. And one of the features of your question is, sometimes they get stuck. And on the one hand, and on the other hand, on the one hand, acknowledging honestly mistakes. Introspective souls do that. Humble, introspective soul, that's a symptom of the mode of goodness. So you're not off target. You're doing the right thing. However, the influence of ignorance is to dwell on it. That's the getting stuck part. So now if there's the beast, it's the mode of ignorance, beast. Dwell on it, get stuck. So how do you move on? When you acknowledge, you offer yourself to Krishna. That's the bhakti solution. Krishna, you know my shortcomings. I'm acknowledging my shortcomings. Another mode of goodness, this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a mode of goodness characteristic, or lakshana, is I regret. Tapa. According to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings, that's a tapa for a mode of goodness person. I regret. However, it's mode of ignorance if you dwell in regret. That's the rub. That's the beast. That's the enemy, and it's within. It's the mode of ignorance tendency to dwell on feeling bad about my mistakes. It's okay, keep making mistakes, not that. Acknowledge the mistakes, regret the mistakes, and move on. And move on to what? Move on to what you know is light. Because, so by introspection and by self-honesty, I missed the mark. Whatever that, fill in the blank, whatever that might be. I didn't do it what I knew, or I did something wrong, or so whatever the mistake is characterized best, it's part of my conditioning. I want to become free from the conditioning, let me move towards the light. So that's bhakti. So bhakti is the antidote to that obstacle. Krishna, you know who I am. I know who I am, and I'm a flawed person. I'm acknowledging it. I don't want to stay flawed. I want to go to you. So that's how to get unstuck. And keep the association of those that not only speak transcendence but live transcendence. And they may also be like you, less than perfect. And that's okay, because we're trying to become. So associate with those that are trying to become, and their imperfections may not match yours. You may see some imperfections in them, and that's okay, because they're on the path of striving for being connected with Krishna all the time. So keep that sangha, and then they'll help you get, sadhu sangha will help you get unstuck. Not that you stop acknowledging the mistakes, acknowledge the mistakes, and the more you progress, the more you feel, gosh, there's more mistakes than I was aware of 1 year ago. So many mistakes, subtle ones, but so many mistakes. So that's progress. Sadhu Sangha, bhajana kriya, hearing and chanting, and trying to apply, trying to immerse myself imperfectly, as imperfect as I am. That's how sadhana bhakti in the right association can lead to spontaneous, or raga bhakti, or raga anuga bhakti. And that's the path that we're on. That's Rupa Goswami. We're followers of Rupa Goswami. He gives us that. So you want to know what it is, Prabhupada has given it to us. Nectar devotion. It's easy to get stuck. It takes XYZ things already mentioned to get unstuck from stuck. But keep moving. Be progressive. Because bhakti is not static, it's ecstatic. It's meant to bring us to that a happiness that doesn't. It's not the happiness that says I'm flawless. That's not what the characteristic of someone who's on the platform of perfection or striving sincerely. They feel very humble, meek, not so qualified. Yet on the spontaneous side is striving to be like what I know is right, in the association of those who are like that too, like-minded. They may be less than perfect like I am. That's okay. I want that association and get strength beyond my own strength. Keep going. That's the formula for getting unstuck. And how long will that take? However long it takes, that's how long it'll take. Because we just keep applying the principles in good association. And bhakti, in the mood of service, let me apply, not just because I don't want to be a flawed person. That's the negative. The positive is because I want Guru and Krishna to smile. I want their happiness, not I want out of being a flawed person. And the misery that comes with knowing that I'm a flawed person. Move from that dark position to the position of bhakti, and you'll be protected from those shortcomings, the consequences of those shortcomings, and the tendency for shortcomings. You'll be protected. Krishna will clean the heart. Dunoti Shamalam Krishna. He's not a janitor, but he makes the heart clean. And that's the confidence of bhakti. Discussion further? Yes, you have something in the back.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Guru Maharaj, the Srimad Bhagavatam is so sweet that
Srimad Bhagavatam is also what?
Srimad Bhagavatam is so sweet that just by reading it, purification happens. But I was also hearing this Gokarna story, how unless until we contemplate on the subject, it's I don't know what to say. Unless until we contemplate on the subject matter, there is not much effect of it.
Oh, you're saying I haven't heard what you just said. It won't be complete, but you didn't say it won't be complete. You said it won't be much effect.
So my question is that how to contemplate on it? Is it
it grows by practice. Sincerity. You know that nice word. By sincerity of practice. So, and my capacity to be absorbed and attentive fluctuates from one moment to the next moment. What to speak of one phase of my bhakti life and another phase of my bhakti life. That unsteadiness is just a symptom of my conditioning. Now, what to do? So you strive to be a sincere, or using another word, Prabhupada's word, ardent hearing. Ardent based upon faith. This is going to help remove the coverings that are blocking my relationship with Krishna and keeping falsely the conception that I'm at the center instead of Krishna's at the center. With faith in the Shravanam Kirtanam process, let me carry on in good company, knowing that the fluctuation of my sincerity and my attentiveness and everything is going to go up and down. That's unsteady bhakti. That's where I am. And let me sincerely strive to go the next step. That's our life. In good association, trying to be as you are trying to be, in a service mood, serving the Vaishnavas, serving Guru and Krishna, serving. That's your life. It's my life. And stay there. And continue with the process of hearing from our scriptures and hearing elevated souls describe the application, the implication and application of those devotional texts. And you continue. That's the striving, the sadhana bhakti stage. And you're less than perfect like the rest of us. So welcome to the club. I think we'll end there. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki.